this recording. And so, as many of you would know, or you should know by now, that we have a new NCC that's come out. That's just come into effect about 3 months ago. However, whenever we get a new NCC, you've got 12 months in which to transition. So we're working with the new NCC and we're referring to that, but just in practice, whenever a new NCC comes out, you have that 12-month transition time to do that. So for working out our wet area details, our two sources of information for that are going to be, well, for a residential property, NCC Volume 2, and then also the reference Australian Standard AS 3740, 2010. So that's what.
Can you repeat? AS?
AS
2040?
Yep, 3740. AS 3740, yep, and that's 2010. It was last updated. So that's waterproofing of domestic wet areas. So in the NCC, go to your contents page, the relevant section is going to be part 3.8.1, wet areas and external waterproofing. For this project, we're only concerned with wet areas, but external waterproofing is also vitally important for you to understand as drafters, and it is something that often gets neglected by builders as well. But it can be incredibly expensive. I've seen some horrendous repairs required because poor understanding around waterproofing externally. But we're concerned with internal waterproofing. So in the NCC, when we go to part 3.8.1, the first important section in that, page 274, is building elements in wet areas within a building must be waterproof or water resistant in accordance with table 3.8.1.1 and comply with AS 3740. So within that 2019 NCC, and I'll just bring that up now, and we'll go to page 274. We have this table, 3.8.1.2 or 3.8.1.1 table. I'm not going to read through all of this now and confuse you, but please do this at home. Some things you might not understand by reading it at home is a shower area with a hob. Do you understand what a shower area or what a hob is?
Shower area, hob?
Yes, shower, yeah, cool. So a hob is a small square raised section on the floor that stops water going out of the shower area. If I cruise down, it's shown in AS 3740. I'll show you a cross section through a hob in that Australian Standard. So yeah, that hob is the little square section. A step down. So step down for shower, that's where you don't have a hob, but your shower is actually recessed further. Or without hob or step down, that's where you've got your shower area.
Slope.
Yeah, slope, exactly. Flush to the floor. Whenever you do a disabled bathroom, it has to be without a hob or a step down. It has to be. It has to be, yeah. So floors and horizontal surfaces. So look at the top of your table here. You've got a waterproof floor in the shower area, regardless of whether it has a hob, set down or step down. With your walls, you've got a waterproof all walls and shower area to a height of the greater of not less than 150 millimetres above floor substrate or not less than 25 millimetres above maximum retained water level. Typically, the way you're going to detail it up is to say that your waterproofing is 150 millimetres above your floor area. The reason for that is that tiles, you get tiles that are 150 millimetres, and that's a very standard thing to do, is to have your tiles around the wall, that 150 millimetres. Because wherever you do your waterproofing, if you paint over that, it's all bubbly. You can't, so you've got to stick tiles over top of it anyhow to make it look any good.
It has to be the entire bathroom or just the shower area?
So it is the entire bathroom, but so if you read through this table, you get all of that information piece by piece. Okay. Here it's all written up, but in AS3740 it shows you all of that diagrammatically. So go back to the wet areas slide. So that's the section. Quickly just this NCC. So we've got that table, and that's about it in the NCC, except for some other. I'll show you these other little bits. But nationally, for the national standards, pretty much this table and the reference to AS3740 is all that's covered in the waterproofing of wet areas. Then, beneath that table in the NCC, we've got state and territory variations. The NCC is a little bit tricky in that there are state and territory variations embedded into the text of the NCC. So we look at part 3.8.1 for wet areas, and it has this little bit here for state and territory variations in South Australia. You have to do this. But then also at the back of the NCC, you also have another section for state and territory variations. So always beware of that. And it's more something you just have to specifically know that for wet areas we have to refer to that. For floor heights we have to refer to the back of the NCC. So there are two sections. So the first one, that's in part 3.8.1, and it just simply says that in South Australia, delete 3.8.1.2 and insert this as follows. Building elements in wet areas when the building must be waterproof or water resistant in accordance with that table. So that table above saying floors, etc. I'll just cut to the chase. In South Australia, you have to do it in a place where you have a washing machine. Nationally, you don't. Okay. This doesn't really concern us for our project unless you're doing slicing through the laundry, but you don't have to. But in South Australia, we have to do waterproofing for behind a washing machine to 75 millimetres above the taps. Also in South Australia, we have to do waterproofing to 150 millimetres to any wall above a kitchen sink. So kitchens in South Australia are considered wet areas. If we cross over into Victoria, then the kitchen is no longer a wet area. I think it's a good thing that we treat kitchens as wet areas because there can be a lot of water getting around in a kitchen.
Is this a new one, or has it been around for a while already?
It's been around for quite a long time. That one, that I think that came about when the NCC happened initially. That South Australia didn't agree with that. So because that's what these state and territory variations are all about. Is it used to be you had the building code of Australia, and then you used to have various different housing codes for each state. That got all pulled together, except for the things that states couldn't agree on. And that's why we have state and territory variations. Plus, you also get ministers making specific choices about things. They say, oh, we've had this problem with bushfires or something. I'm going to make this minister specification about that. That ends up getting included into the NCC in time, but not all the other states want to adopt it, so it goes as a state and territory variation. So that's the two ways in which these come about. This one's an old one. So, yeah, that's that one in summary. Kitchens are included in South Australia, and so are laundries. For 150 millimetres above 75 millimetres above your taps for washing machine. But the one that really does relate to you in this project is the one at the back of the NCC, the State Territory Variations there. And the real bit here is the fall of the floor surface graded to a floor waste in accordance with A or C must be between 1 in 60 and 1 in 80 in the shower area, and between 1 in 80 and 1 in 100 in other areas. That is different to what's nationally. So if we have a look at AS 3740, it tells us that our floor grade for the whole room has to be minimum 1 in 100, and the grade for our shower has to be minimum 1 in 80. That's nationally. South Australia, it has to be between this range, 1 in 60 and 1 in 80. So South Australia, it has to be slightly steeper. So pay attention. Yeah. When you draw your wet areas, when you do a cross section through, you're going to have to show a floor trap, so a drain in the floor, and you're going to have to show your screed sloping toward that floor trap. Does everybody understand how a screed works and a set down works for a bathroom? If we go pouring a concrete slab, we don't get our concreters to produce a 1 in 80 slope on our bathroom floor at that point in time, do we? Because they're rushing around madly trying to get this concrete pour done. They set the whole thing down by about 50 millimeters. So they, yeah, and then later on, when everything else is done, even when the walls are put up and the building is enclosed, then somebody like your tiler comes along, they mix up a cement screed, so it doesn't have the large chunks of aggregate in it, it's just got smaller sand in it. They pour that out, they do it to a nice consistency so they can trowel that up to get that slope perfect. So the way you'll end up drawing it is you'll draw your coarse concrete underneath where you're set down at 50 millimeters, and then your cementitious screed on top, a little dot hatch like that. And you show your floor slope there, and then you'll have a leader saying floor slope between 1 in 80 and 1 in 100, the general floor area.
So in NCC sections, we'll get all the information about thickness of floor material.
So from just recently, when you did that building designer consult, you got sent the correct footing plan. Yeah, everybody got that correct footing plan.
Yeah.
So on that correct footing plan, it tells you information about your concrete slab. It says the concrete slab is 100 millimeters thick. Also on that correct footings plan, it says when you've got the fill that's 300 millimeters or thick or greater, then you have to increase the thickness of your slab to 130 millimeters with additional layer of SL72 slab mesh on the bottom.
And uncontrolled fill.
For uncontrolled fill, exactly. So, look, I'll leave that completely up to you guys, whether you want to draw your slab at 100 millimeters or whether you want to draw your slab at 130. Probably realistically for this scenario, because we're cutting in that bit, you probably will have about 300 mils of uncontrolled fill. It's sort of right on that boundary there. So that's up to you guys whether you want to go that whole hog and draw 130, draw your slab mesh at the top and the bottom, or yeah. But you follow those details as set out in that footings plan. But we'll talk more about detailing up footings a little bit later. So you get your slab thickness from that. And also on that page, it shows you how to step your mesh down for set downs as well. That detail is shown on there, on that page. So you can grab that and you can show it in there if you wish. But for drawing your set downs, you don't have to draw in your mesh if you don't want to, because that's not an important detail for the people doing the waterproofing. That mesh is there. It's already gone in, the concrete's already set. They've got nothing to do with it. So it's not important for them. So you think about your audience. So draw your set down at, and the typical set down is 50 millimeters, but it doesn't have to be 50 millimeters. If you're building a really big bathroom, to create that slope relationship, you're going to have a much larger set down. If you're building a small bathroom, well then your set down can be less. And it's good to set your set down a little bit less if you're doing a small bathroom, because that means that your tiler doesn't have to mix up several barrow loads of screed. So it's because that screed is not cheap. That's quite a bit more expensive than concrete. That's all by the by. So these are in the slides. I'll add these slides to the Learn page as well for you. But beware that that's in the back of the NCC. Yes, I included the page number when I did this snip. So page 459 are the state and territory variations that relate to our floor slopes. So that's all the information we get from the NCC. Then, because the NCC refers us to AS 3740, the bits we're going to be on the contents page that are going to be important to us from AS 3740 are materials. So earlier on in the NCC it referred to waterproof and water resistant. You can probably everybody understands the difference between waterproof and water resistant. Like you buy a waterproof watch, you can wear it in the pool. Buy a water resistant one, you probably don't want to. Same thing with bathroom materials. Put really simple, so AS 3740 defines what is waterproof and what is water resistant. Go in there, have a look at those things, but put simply, water resistant materials are things such as fibre cement sheet and tiles. So you use fibre cement sheet for if it's a suspended timber floor, and use fibre cement sheet on your walls as your water resistant material, and then put tiles over the top of that. That's not considered waterproof, because if you fill the whole room full of water, it'll seep out through there eventually. So that's water resistant. What is regarded as waterproof, just putting it really simply, are the paint-on membranes. So it'll say a membrane that's considered waterproof is a membrane that's meets AS 48, 37 or something like that, whichever one it is. That's for membrane manufacturers to worry about. So that's put really simply. You can read that a little bit more if you wish, because there are some other materials such as stainless steel and copper and all that sort of stuff talking about their properties, and that can be handy for you if you're going to be a little bit more inventive with what you're doing architecturally. But for our project, we're dealing with fibre cement sheet, tiles and a waterproof membrane. The other sections which are going to be really handy for you is part 3.13, general shower area requirements. So it tells you what you have to do with your detailing within showers. So we read that table earlier on, and it was saying waterproof to 150 millimeters. If we read more through that table, it would say water resistant to 1800 high. That's why typically when you go in a shower, you'll see the tiles, or on me it's about here. So the line of tiles is at 1800 high, and that's where it stops, because that's where it has to be water resistant to. And then you also want to see membrane to drainage connection. So one of the things we have to detail in our wet area details is to put in a drainage flange. And I'll show you what a drainage flange is. But in AS 3740 it shows you how that waterproofing membrane has to be painted on top of that drainage flange and continue into that drainage flange. That's to ensure that any water gets carried into that drainage flange rather than carried towards the drainage flange and soak underneath. So that detail is in there because you have to draw this detail. That detail is already drawn for you in AS 3740. If you're really tricky, you can grab those details from AS 3740 and put them into your drawing set. That's considered correct. Or if you want to be much neater and present it much nicer, draw it up yourself. Because you notice the ones in AS 3740 are very simple.
So it's basically you draw it up once, and then you can probably use it for several projects.
Oh yes, exactly. What we did in our office, we had 3 pages of wet area details. So we had absolutely every scenario detailed up, and then just chuck them on, pop them on, and Yeah, so and then you change the particulars in the title block.
So it's going to be worth drawing them up nicely once because you'll be using it.
That's what I reckon, yeah. It depends on how much time you've got in this subject, but you will want to have a very nice set of wet area details because you'll be using them again and again and again. The other one that's important to look at is installation of an internal membrane. So that tells you how that waterproof membrane gets installed. Beyond that, you want to look at design considerations in wet areas of waterproofing. That section is quite good for some other details, and so is extent of waterproofing in your appendices. So all of these ones which I've highlighted in yellow are the important points you want to be looking at in AS3740 for drawing your details. This bit here, falls and floor finishes. Don't pay attention to that because that's the national standard. We have something different in South Australia. So, as we work our way through, we'll see some details like this, and these are the type of details that you will include in your wet area details. So this is for a shower which is set down. Now, if you want to be tricky, you can have a look at Project 2 and you realise that you're having to do a disabled bathroom. If you want to draw if you want to detail the shower up in this house as an open shower as well, that means you do one set of yeah.
Okay, let me take a note.
So this is all detail line work, isn't it?
It is all detail line work. So yeah. And what this shows is that waterproof membrane. It shows a water stop. So a water stop is an angle that's attached to the floor that sits inside your screed. So this is our concrete flooring underneath, and they've done their screed, and that's probably sloping this way to a floor drain. But they have that water stop there, and so they carry their waterproofing membrane over that and over the water stop. So the water stop, that's just a little plastic angle that ensures that if water soaks into this screed, as it will through these, through those grout gaps in tile eventually, a little bit of soak in there, that will transfer down this way. It won't keep going through the floor and into another room or into the concrete slab. So typically in your waterproofing details, you show that detail, and then if you're doing yourself a full set of waterproofing details which you can use for every single project, you'll detail up a shower with a set down, you'll detail up a shower with a hob. Do I have that's another set down there. You'll detail one with a hob, you'll detail one with a preformed shower base, you'll detail one that's an open shower. I haven't included all of those. All of those details are in AS3740. You can see all of those details there. What I have shown here is there are two ways of doing your membranes. There's one way where you put your membrane underneath your screed, so that you paint it onto your concrete floor and then you do your screed on top. Or you can put your screed down first and then you paint your membrane on top. There are pros and cons to each. The pro to this is that you can paint your your tiler has to come back several times. So the tiler paints the membrane on, and then once that is set, they can come back another day. They do their screed. That screed can go off, and then they can do their tiling after that. Or if they're doing this, then they come one day, they do their screed, then they're doing their membrane later on, and then wait for that to dry and do their second coat, and then they do their tiling on top. This type, doing it this way, you have to use a drainage flange because it means your screed gets wet.
Yeah, that's what I've been
Yeah.
thinking.
Yes, yeah. So that way you have to drain that screed somehow. This one you don't have to drain your screed somehow, but if you go changing your tiles one day, pulling up your tiles and redoing your bathroom, then you have to redo your membrane. This one, you can pull your tiles up, you don't have to redo your membrane.
There are very less chances we will do tiling again.
Oh, I don't know. People like to renovate their houses. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's enough reno shows on TV inspiring people to get out there and
So is it really expensive?
and go to
New
Bunnings,
membrane?
whatever. Well, no, so the whole bucket of membrane material costs about $300 or $400, but the expense is in getting somebody out to do it and that person taking the liability for that membrane. Because if you go, so let's say I'm a waterproofing contractor, I'll go do the waterproofing. Yes, I'll charge for that bucket of membrane, but the biggest charge I'll have is to protect myself against if I've made a mistake with that membrane and my insurance has to pick up.
So
that
can people do this
cost.
themselves, or
Look.
or do you have to go through paperwork?
Yeah, councils won't like to hear that people have done it themselves. This is an integral part of keeping that building from failing.
Yeah.
Because I think of the repair and rectification work that we did, water damage was number 1, fires number 2, and then vehicle impacts number 3. So water damage in buildings is a major cause of building failures. Look, if you're renovating a property or something like that, nothing's going through council, well then sort of.
I'm also thinking owner builders.
But if you're an owner builder, council probably won't like to see that you've done your waterproofing yourself. They will want to see that sign off. And if you're having a site supervisor sign off on your building after you've done that, look, if I was a site supervisor worth my salt, I wouldn't want to be signing off someone's waterproofing work.
Yeah. Doesn't make sense.
No. You want a waterproofing contractor to do it, basically, is a short answer. Look, if you're fastidious, it's not rocket science. It's just about being really fastidious, about being really clean, preparing your surface really well, and ensuring that you get it into absolutely every little bit. You don't have any little pinholes. It's simply about being fastidious. But the thing is, once it's down, it's really hard to tell if someone's being fastidious or not.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering if there's a lot of benefits, because you were explaining the difference whether the waterproofing membrane was
on top or bottom.
And then this, how often do you really retile?
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not that often, but it might happen. And
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
buy a house that has been
I know.
redone
I was
with,
just wondering if it's if the cost is high of something like that or not.
Yeah.
It's going to be worth.
Yeah,
It's
the
part of
cost.
the consideration.
Yeah. So the cost is high, but to
Yeah.
buy a drainage flange, to put a drainage flange in, that's really cheap. They're about $30.
Yeah.
So also you've got your different types of membranes. So if you have a look in AS 3740, it talks about Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 membranes. To put it really simply, you're always going to be dealing with Class 3 membranes as drafted, pretty much. That's what we use in residential construction because the Class 3 membrane is the most flexible. If you go to buy, one of these waterproofing membranes, you'll be buying a Class 3 membrane. So that's the detail that's most important. What this detail is, this is the detail about a bond breaker right in the corner. The reason you have a bond breaker is because your wall and floor junction might move slightly. If that moves slightly and your waterproofing membrane is bonded right into that corner with both, it'll crack right in that corner. But for your Class 3 membrane, all you have to do to protect it is to do a cove of silicon. So you use what's called a neutral cure silicon, so a silicon that doesn't shrink when it cures. That's the type of silicon that smells a bit like vinegar, if ever you've used. So anyhow, you run that silicon in there as a tiny little bead, and then you trowel it off with a little angled trowel. That's it. It's super simple. That's the detail you use. These other details, that's for doing wet areas in aquatic centres and things like that, where you need a heavy-duty membrane that doesn't have as much flexibility. So it has far more wear and tear in it. Residential, you use class 3. This is the other detail from AS 3740 showing the drainage flange. So this is our concrete here, and you notice the concrete is slightly stepped down there to accommodate the drainage flange. That is a good detail. You won't always get that happening on site, but if I'm supervising concreters on site that are putting in, recessing that drainage flange in when they're doing a concrete pour, you want to see that. I want to see that on a building, because if they've been slack and they just put that drainage flange that's standing up slightly here, what happens when you do your membrane? It has to fold up slightly over, and then you've got that 3 millimeters or so that's not draining to your drainage flange. It's harbouring moisture, growing mould, that sort of thing. So a tiny little thing is set, your drainage flange should be set down into your slab ever so slightly. Then, that waterproof membrane has to fold down into the drainage flange like this, and then that joins up with your pipe work. So what you're going to be doing at your concrete pouring stage is just creating that set down. You're not necessarily installing that one then at that point in time, because your pipe is going to be poking up. You just want to create a small set down for that. Then that's your actual drainage flange. So that's what it looks like. So your floor grate, that's the bit that you see in your bathroom, that sits up there. What sits between your floor grate and the drainage flange is your screed. So this allows the water from your screed to bleed into here and then go into the drain. And so we want our waterproofing membrane to go along the top of that and then fold into it.
Okay.
And that's it from a top view.
This circle, this shape will be always circular or rectangular?
They're always circular. Yep. And they just sit just into your floor.
I've never seen this before. It's not common in Brazil.
No. Yeah, I know they're very common to use in Australia. I think they're used fairly widely in the US as well. Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, I don't think they are universal.
It's just interesting because I've never thought about it. Like the water going into the screed, and you have a way to drain that water.
Yeah,
it's such a good idea, and we don't use it.
Yeah. And then further on in AS 3740, you've got, so we talked about that table in the NCC that said this is what has to be waterproof, this is what has to be water resistant. Well, in AS 3740 it shows you diagrammatically. So for an open shower, that's a shower that doesn't have any hob or set down or anything, you have to waterproof your floor to 1500 millimeters from that shower rose. So you draw a radius there, but because your water because you have to carry your waterproofing to your water stop, it never happens in an arc like this, because you can't get your water stop and bend that in an arc. That happens in a straight line, and also you want to have that happen in a straight line because it corresponds to your tile joints. So what's going to happen is that distance is going to be 1500 millimeters as a square like this. That's all.
Much easier.
Yeah, much easier. But you have to waterproof that floor area, and then in the shower you're waterproofing to 150 millimeters and then 40 millimeters either side of your vertical join. And then it's water resistant to 1800 high. To make your walls adequately water resistant, it says you have to use water resistant plasterboard or fibre cement sheet, and then it has to be tiled to 1800 high. So that's for an open shower. That's for a shower over a bath. So it's a little bit more complex for that because you've got to do your waterproofing on all of these joints here, like this. But then for the rest of your floor, we're doing that waterproofing to 150 millimeters high or 25 millimeters above retained water level. I'm not expecting you to design any floors that have a retained water level. So we're looking at 150 millimeters. And that's it for waterproofing details. How do you think you go?
Yeah.
Pretty good?
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So have a crack at doing all those waterproof. So do the section through your building and have a go at doing all those waterproofing details by Monday if you can. That puts you at the same place as all the other people who are doing building rules consent externally, because they've done this already, and then we'll coordinate with all of those students from there on. So what I'm looking to do now is next week we'll do our classes in the afternoon for building rules consent on both Monday and Wednesday. So it looks like I'm going to sort us out a room for Wednesday because we can't continue to just hang out in here. So we'll have to sort that out. But yeah, from now on, Mondays and Wednesdays in the afternoons, we're doing things for building rules consent. Cool.